Canada has long been known as a peaceful nation, with civilized cities where people live in harmony with nature and knowledge. But in the summer of 2009, a horrifying tragedy shocked the country, unfolding in the quiet, elegant city of Kingston. It was a so-called honor crime, one that tore through the Mohammed Shafia family. In the midst of Kingston's peaceful surroundings, a submerged car revealed a chilling secret. 4 women from the same family had died together under tragic and suspicious circumstances. People who should have protected each other as family became entangled in a nightmare of betrayal and death. What could drive parents to harm their own children? Where is the line between culture, honor, and crime? Was this a tragic domestic dispute, or was something even darker behind it all? Let's uncover the truth behind this heartbreaking case. And if it's your first time visiting our channel, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future investigations. On the morning of June 30th, 2009, just one day before Canada Day, Kingston was buzzing with celebration. Around 9:30 a.m., a worker named John was doing maintenance near the Kingston Mills locks, located north of the Rideau Canal. That's when he noticed something strange below the water's surface. Curious, he moved closer, and what he saw sent chills down his spine. A black Nissan Sentra was submerged about 1 meter underwater. Feeling something was wrong, John quickly called the police. At first, officers assumed it might be a prank, maybe a car pushed into the water by mischievous teens. But once divers examined the vehicle, the situation turned grim. Inside the car were the lifeless bodies of 4 women, their skin pale against the cold. Murky water, the police immediately began recovering the vehicle for further examination. Initial investigations revealed strange details. The driver's side window was open, the front seat reclined completely, and the gear was in first position. The car showed signs of damage underneath and at the rear bumper, with the left taillight shattered. Investigators also found fragments of another car's taillight nearby, pieces that didn't match the Nissan Sentra. These findings raised serious doubts. Was this really just an accident? While investigators were still working the scene, around 12:30 p.m., police received a report of missing persons. 3 people: Mohammed Shafia, age 58, his wife Tuba Mohammed Yahya, and their son Hamd came to file the report. They claimed that 3 daughters and a female relative had gone out the previous day and never returned. What they said sent a chill through investigators. The number of missing people matched the number of bodies found in the sunken car. After confirming the identities, police determined that the victims were Zainab, 19, Sahar, 17, Gidi, 13, and Rona Mohammed, 52, 3 daughters of the Shafia family and 1 relative. This discovery turned what first seemed like a tragic accident into a major criminal investigation, one that would soon grip the entire nation. What really happened to these 4 women? Why did they all perish under such suspicious circumstances? Authorities began questioning the Shafia family, trying to piece together what had taken place before this terrible incident. According to the testimony of Mohammed Shafia, around June 23, 2009, the whole family, including his wife and Rona, set out for Niagara Falls to enjoy a summer vacation. They traveled in 2 separate cars, cheerfully sightseeing for several days before heading back, and stopped at a modest motel in Kingston in the early hours of June 30th. That night, the eldest daughter, Zainab, suddenly took the keys to the black Nissan, saying she had forgotten something in the car. Unexpectedly, she quietly left with her 2 younger sisters and Aunt Rona without telling anyone. From that moment on, the 4 women completely vanished into the night. When recalling the event, Mohammed Shafia showed clear signs of anger, blaming his eldest daughter Zainab, who had been rebellious and headstrong since she was young. He emphasized that she had no driver's license and didn't know how to drive, yet still insisted on going out, ultimately leading to disaster. Beside him, Tuba nearly collapsed emotionally. She burst into tears repeatedly, and anyone watching couldn't help but feel sympathy for a mother who had just lost her daughters so suddenly. Initially, police believed it was simply a tragic accident. However, The deeper they investigated the scene and surrounding clues, the more strange and unexplainable details began to emerge. First, technical experts pointed out that when a car plunges into water, it typically takes 1 to 2 minutes to fully submerge. The Nissan, however, was found only about 1 to 2 meters from the water's surface. With the driver's window rolled down, all 4 victims had enough time to escape, so why didn't they? Second, the area where the car was found was very difficult to access. To reach that specific spot, the vehicle had to pass over a grassy field, dodge large concrete blocks, and squeeze through a narrow gap between a wall and a massive gate. Deep scratches were also found on the car's body. All signs pointed to something far more deliberate than a simple mishap. Third, investigators couldn't find any brake marks at the scene. There was no sign the driver tried to stop the vehicle. Moreover, Kevin, the supervisor at the Kingston Lock area, said a night shift employee reported hearing strange metallic crashing sounds around the time of the incident. Taking all this into account, the police began to suspect this was more than an accident. It was a premeditated murder. The head of the household, Mohammed Shafia, came from a middle-class family in Khan, Afghanistan. Although he only completed 7th grade, he was extremely sharp and ambitious, always dreaming of becoming a wealthy businessman. At 18, with a 10,000 Afghani loan from his grandfather, Mohammed Shafia opened a small electronics repair shop. He later expanded to selling radios and gradually built a multi-million-dollar import-export company, eventually becoming an exclusive distributor of Japanese electronics. From an unknown nobody, Mohammed quickly rose to power in Kabul, owning luxury villas, apartments, and living a lavish life many could only dream of. Despite his professional success, Mohammed's marital life was deeply rooted in tradition. The older woman, who was found dead along with the 3 girls, initially introduced as a relative, was in fact one of Mohammed's 2 wives, named Rona Mohammed Oma. Rona was the daughter of a retired army colonel, known for her beauty and grace. The moment Mohammed's mother met her, she was immediately taken with her and strongly pushed for the marriage. Rona herself didn't object and once said, "If he's a good man, I'll marry him." Mohammed was also quickly captivated by Rona's beauty, showering her with expensive jewelry in an effort to win her heart. In February 1979, the couple held a lavish wedding at the most luxurious hotel in Kabul. Rona stunned in a pale blue dress, while Mohammed looked elegant in a deep purple suit. Onlookers praised them as a perfect match, but no one could have predicted that this beautiful beginning would mark the start of a horrific tragedy decades later, far away in Canada. After the grand wedding, Mohammed and Rona began what seemed to be a blissful life. He focused on his business while she took care of the home. To neighbors, they appeared to be the ideal couple. However, after years together, they remained childless. Medical tests revealed that Rona was unable to conceive. In Afghanistan's traditional society, where continuing the family line is highly valued, being childless brought immense pressure, especially for a wealthy businessman like Mohammed. Eventually, Rona agreed to let him take a second wife. Under Afghan law, a man can have up to 4 wives. This made the situation even more heartbreaking for Rona. Mohammed's second wife, Tuba Mohammed Yahya, was only 17 years old at the time, exactly 17 years younger than him. Their wedding took place in 1989 at the same hotel where he had once married Rona. But unlike the first time, their wedding photos showed no genuine smiles. Still, after the marriage, Tuba gave birth to 7 children for Mohammed. During this period, Rona remained in the household and helped raise the children as her own. She managed the household so well that Tuba was deeply grateful. As a token of appreciation, Tuba entrusted her 3rd daughter, Sarah, to Rona's care, accompanied by words that sounded more like a favor than a request. Though reluctant, Rona loved the child and agreed to this awkward arrangement. In 1992, the family fled Afghanistan to escape the war. They moved to Pakistan, then to Dubai, and even spent a year in Australia. During their 10 years in Dubai, Muhammad's children attended American-style private schools and were exposed to modern Western education, mingling with international peers and developing upper-class manners. By 2007, Muhammad had become a millionaire and longed to move to a developed country. When Quebec, Canada, launched an attractive investment immigration program, he seized the opportunity, investing $2 million Canadian into a shopping center near Montreal and building a villa worth $200,000. Soon, the family obtained Canadian permanent residency. However, Canadian law prohibits polygamy. Rona's status as his first wife could have jeopardized their immigration status. To avoid this, Muhammad claimed she was his cousin, brought over only to help with household chores. Only after 5 months did he sponsor her to join them. In the beginning, the family squeezed into a shabby rental apartment. The children even slept directly on the floor. Muhammad didn't pay much attention to these hardships. He was too focused on growing his business, buying a Lexus SUV, starting an import-export company, selling building materials, home appliances, and used cars. As his businesses prospered, Muhammad became increasingly absent, often away for months at a time. From the outside, he appeared to be a successful man, his children enjoying the best education and a life of luxury. But when police dug deeper into the family, they uncovered a dark, disturbing truth. The children in Muhammad's family were living in an oppressive atmosphere, especially the daughters, who often clashed bitterly with their parents. According to accounts from teachers, friends, and neighbors, a picture of a dark and troubled household gradually emerged. Although they lived in a free and progressive country like Canada, Muhammad remained conservative and imposed strict control over his daughters. Muhammad's brother Latif told police that the house was no different from a prison. Women had absolutely no freedom. I once invited my nieces to my daughter's wedding. They even had beautiful dresses sewn for the event. But when Muhammad found out, not only did he forbid them from going, he tore up those dresses in front of everyone. On top of that, Muhammad enforced an extremely strict set of family rules. The daughters were strictly forbidden from dating. They weren't allowed to wear revealing clothing, use makeup, and had to wear headscarves to school. Most importantly, they had to avoid any close contact with boys. These rules were extremely harsh and unreasonable, especially for the girls. Among them, the most rebellious was the eldest daughter, Zainab, who was beautiful, confident, and passionate about music and fashion. She constantly tried to express herself, from bold outfits to posting personal pictures online. Such behavior was absolutely unacceptable in Muhammad's eyes. He openly berated and insulted Zainab, accusing her of disgracing the family and ruining the reputation he had worked so hard to build. The tension between father and daughter only escalated over time, slowly sowing the seeds of future tragedy. Zainab fell in love with a young Pakistani man named Amr. Their young love was sweet but reckless, and it didn't escape the notice of her younger brother, Hamd, who had always acted as their father's informant. Hamd didn't hesitate to report everything. When Muhammad found out, he flew into a rage. He forced Zainab to quit school and locked her in the house like a prisoner. But Zainab wasn't easily broken. She pretended to be obedient in order to gain her family's trust and be allowed out of the house. Then, she secretly contacted Amr and even brought him home when her parents were away. Unfortunately, Hamd caught them again. The consequence was a complete lockdown. Zainab was no longer allowed to leave the house. Sarah, her 17-year-old sister, was also fighting for her own freedom. Tired of the strict rules, Sarah refused to wear a headscarf, enjoyed makeup, and loved wearing eye-catching outfits to parties. She also fell in love with a boy named Sanchez, a romance that became the talk of the school. But the secret didn't stay hidden for long. Her mother, Tuba, even went to the school to confront teachers, humiliating Sarah to the point she wished she could disappear. Back at home, Sarah endured beatings and harsh verbal abuse from her parents. The pressure became so overwhelming that she fell into depression and even resorted to taking pills to end her pain. Fortunately, a teacher noticed and reported the situation to Child Protective Services. In front of investigators, Sarah broke down and revealed the abuse she suffered at the hands of her father and brother. But when faced with her father's angry gaze, she suddenly withdrew and denied everything. The investigation was sadly dropped. The youngest daughter, Gidi, only 13 years old, witnessed it all. To Gidi, her sisters were role models, a source of inspiration that pushed her to rise up. But her rebellion was impulsive. She dressed provocatively, often came home late, and her academic performance declined with 3 or 4 failed subjects. Once, she was even beaten by her father for stealing. Gidi once dreamed of running away from home, but it never came true. All 3 sisters, Zainab, Sarah, and Gidi, were trapped in the cycle of domestic violence. Verbal abuse and beatings from their father and from Hamd happened regularly. They had once reached out to social services, but without concrete evidence, everything was in vain. What puzzled many was the strange favoritism from their parents. While the daughters were tightly controlled, Hamd was allowed total freedom and was even encouraged to abuse his sisters. Why such injustice? On May 17, 2009, Zainab decided once and for all to leave her family in search of freedom. At first, she stayed at a women's shelter, and soon after moved in with her boyfriend Amr. When Mr. Mohammed heard the news, he was furious. But since he was away on a business trip, he couldn't do anything. Her younger brother Hamd immediately contacted the police, demanding that his sister be brought back home. But Zainab had already turned 18, and she confidently declared that the police had no authority to interfere. She even openly announced her intention to marry Amr soon. At this point, Mrs. Tuba took a softer approach, using affection to persuade her daughter to return. She promised that if Zainab came back, she would be allowed to marry Amr, and they would even move out to give the young couple the whole house to start their life together. Hearing this, Zainab gave in. She returned home in early May. After a few days of preparation, on May 19th, the wedding of Zainab and Amr was held in accordance with traditional customs. But the wedding day lacked the joy and warmth Zainab had hoped for. Amr's parents strongly opposed the relationship and refused to attend. Relatives on both sides were cold, and some even mocked or sneered at the couple. Faced with a difficult situation, Zainab decided to call off the marriage just shortly after it had begun. The scandalous love story ended in bitterness, leaving Zainab living in constant fear. She anxiously thought about her father's wrath when he returned from his business trip. However, unlike before, her father came home gentle, comforting, and reassuring his confused daughter. "Don't be sad anymore. Everything is over now," he said. He even suggested the whole family take a trip to forget the recent unpleasant events. But no one could have imagined that this vacation would mark the beginning of a tragedy that would take the lives of 4 women. This trip to Niagara Falls was in fact the family's second visit to the place. It all happened rather hastily. They left home on June 23rd and only stayed for 5 days before deciding to return early on the morning of June 29th. However, because the children were reluctant to leave, they didn't check out until 6 p.m. and officially hit the road at 8:20 p.m. The family traveled in 2 vehicles, a silver Lexus SUV and a black Nissan Sentra. On the way back, the family stopped in downtown Toronto for dinner and took some photos. Around 1 a.m., they checked into a small motel in Kingston. According to Mohammed, around 1:30 a.m., his eldest daughter, Zainab, came to his room asking for the keys to the Nissan, saying she had forgotten a few things in the car. After that, she left with the 3 other women and mysteriously disappeared. When police verified Mohammed's statement with the motel manager, several suspicious details emerged. First, the explanation that Zainab wanted to go out late at night was unconvincing, since the family had just endured a more than 6-hour drive. Most people would just want to rest upon arrival, and it was highly unlikely anyone would want to go out again. Second, when they went to the police to report the missing persons, Mohammed and his family arrived in a green Pontiac van, completely different from the silver Lexus used during the trip. Third, according to the motel manager. The Mohammed family arrived around 1:53 a.m. and completed check-in at 2 a.m., but Mohammed claimed Zainab took the keys at 1:30 a.m., which clearly didn't match the timeline. Fourth, the manager didn't recall seeing any of the 4 missing women, nor the black Nissan Sentra. In fact, when booking the rooms, Mohammed clearly stated there were only 6 people in his family and thus only requested 2 rooms. Finally, from Niagara to Kingston, there were at least 5 highway exits and plenty of high-quality hotels, but Mohammed bypassed all of them, even ignoring the hotel they had previously stayed at. Instead, he drove late into the night when everyone was already exhausted, and only then did he agree to stop and rest. Faced with these inconsistencies, Mohammed and his son Hamd quickly tried to explain themselves. Regarding the change of vehicle, Hamd said that he had to urgently drive the Lexus home that night to get a work-related laptop. The next morning, after learning his sisters were missing, he rushed back but was so panicked that he crashed into a parking barrier and had to switch to the Pontiac. As for the confusion over time, room numbers, or skipping better hotels along the way, Mohammed simply explained that due to his age, he was a bit forgetful. He added that booking fewer rooms was just a way to save money, since the trip had already been quite expensive. Police immediately examined the Lexus at Mohammed's house. They quickly discovered that the left front headlight was broken. Inside the trunk, shards of broken headlight glass were still present. Upon further inspection of the scene, police found similar debris near the spot where the Nissan was found, submerged. More seriously, the front bumper of the Lexus had traces of green paint, exactly the same color as a garbage bin near the scene. A piece of pink plastic found inside the Lexus headlight also matched the broken taillight of the submerged Nissan. All of this evidence pointed to the Lexus being at the scene and very likely having collided with the Nissan. Police began to suspect that the car accident story was nothing more than a fabricated cover-up meant to hide a darker truth. As soon as the red flags were identified, officers placed Mohammed and his wife under special surveillance and quietly tracked them. They quickly pulled GPS and phone data from the family members to follow their movements. The family's travel route soon revealed several suspicious turns. On June 23rd, instead of heading directly to Niagara Falls as they claimed, they veered northwest toward Mont-Laurier, Quebec, and spent the night there. The next day, on June 24th, they continued west, passing through Ontario and stopping for an extended period in Kingston. Even more striking, during their supposed vacation in Niagara Falls from June 25th to 29th, Mohammed suddenly left the entire family behind and drove alone back to Kingston, only to return the same day. Then, around 1:36 a.m. on June 30th, Mohammed's phone pinged again, this time near the Kingston Mills locks the exact site of the drowning. In addition to the location data, police received a critical eyewitness account from an 8-year-old boy. He said that on the night of the tragedy, he had seen a car near the crime scene. This detail aligned exactly with the investigators' earlier theories. Meanwhile, the forensic report unveiled disturbing truths. All 4 victims had died from drowning. None of them had poison in their system or fatal wounds on their bodies. Initially, investigators were puzzled. Why didn't any of the victims try to escape as the car sank? But once forensic examiners shaved their heads for closer inspection, the horrifying truth began to surface, except for Sarah. The other 3 victims had suffered severe head injuries caused by blunt force trauma. This meant they were likely knocked unconscious before the car hit the water, leaving them unable to save themselves. In Sarah's case, police didn't disclose details, but one theory suggested she may have been sedated or paralyzed by sheer terror. Another suspicious detail: the black Nissan had been purchased by Mohammed for $5,000 Canadian just days before the trip. Was it possible that he had planned this from the beginning? That he intended to use the car as a murder weapon and then get rid of it? Information from the family's acquaintances and relatives quickly painted a grim picture. A distant relative of Rona, Mrs. Fahima, a human rights activist living in Virginia revealed that for many years, Rona had lived in constant fear due to threats from her husband. Mohammed frequently insulted and physically assaulted Rona, to the point that every time she called home, she would cry and say she feared for her life. An uncle named Lev also said that when Mohammed found out Zainab was planning to get married, he allegedly said, "It's a good thing I wasn't there, or I might have ended her life." Another relative named Fijin recalled that Mohammed once called him, asking him to invite Zainab to Sweden and then find a way to push her into the water so she would drown. Even the immigration lawyer who once helped Mohammed revealed that Mohammed offered him $10,000 to find a way to permanently remove Rona from Canada. To find solid evidence, the police secretly planted a recording device inside the family's vehicle. They then pretended to take the family to the crime scene, claiming that there was a security camera that had captured everything. As expected, on the way home, Mohammed revealed his true nature. As soon as he got in the car, he angrily said, "Getting rid of them was the right thing to do. Let them burn in hell 100 times over. Those shameless girls." His wife, Tuba, coldly added, "We're not confessing anyway." Mohammed continued ranting, "They deserved what they got. They brought shame upon us." Throughout the recording, Mohammed, Tuba, and their son Hamd repeatedly mentioned shame, how death was justified, and debated whether or not they should confess. At that moment, police understood clearly that all three were directly involved in the horrific crime. With strong evidence in hand, the police decided to take immediate action. On May 22, 2009, while on their way to the Montreal airport, all three suspects, Mohammed, Tuba, and Hamd, were arrested at the same time. Police searched their home and found many crucial pieces of evidence. The first crucial piece of evidence was Rona's personal diary, which documented in painful detail the suffering she had endured for decades while living in this oppressive household. Then came the disturbing search history found on Hamid's computer. How to kill for honor, how to drown someone, best place to commit murder. These searches appeared just weeks before the murder took place. One particularly damning phrase was Quebec region, leading investigators to believe the family had originally planned to carry out the killings in Quebec. Hamd had even traveled there in secret to scout out possible locations, but for some unknown reason, they later shifted their plan to Kingston. All of this evidence stripped away the illusion of a respectable family, exposing a cruel and merciless truth. They were willing to take the lives of their own flesh and blood in the name of honor. On October 20, 2011, the trial of this shocking family murder case officially began at the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. Mohammed, his wife Tuba, and their son Hamd were each charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors presented key evidence such as the secret audio recordings, Hamid's internet history, testimonies from witnesses, and most notably, Rona's heart-wrenching diary. Prosecutors made it clear all three had plotted together to eliminate the four victims' family members they believed had disgraced the family name. Mohammed simply couldn't tolerate his daughters becoming more westernized, wearing revealing clothes, using makeup, and having male friends. Meanwhile, his first wife Rona, who was unable to bear children, had long been deemed worthless and a burden, so they decided to eliminate them all to reclaim their so-called honor. In response to the charges, all three defendants denied any wrongdoing. Mohammed even tried to shift the blame onto his daughters, claiming their immoral lifestyles brought about their deaths. He declared bitterly, "This was God's punishment. When you do evil, you get what you deserve. Even death is not enough." Tuba, meanwhile, pointed the finger at her husband. She claimed she and Hamd were innocent, saying they only kept silent out of fear of Mohammed's abusive control. Hamd also denied any involvement, insisting he had been fast asleep the night of the murders and knew nothing of what had happened. Despite their efforts to feign innocence, the mountain of evidence rendered their explanations hollow and unconvincing. On May 29, 2012, after 15 hours of careful deliberation, the jury reached its verdict. All three were found guilty of first-degree murder. In Canada, First-degree murder carries a mandatory life sentence with no chance of parole for the first 25 years. Even so, the three defendants continued to proclaim their innocence to the very end. Muhammad repeatedly shouted in outrage, "This verdict is unfair." Tuba sobbed as she said, "I'm not a murderer, I'm a mother. And no mother would ever be cruel enough to harm her own children." Hamd also firmly denied the accusation. "I never drowned my sisters." They filed multiple appeals, but all were denied. The prosecution's evidence and reasoning were simply too clear, too overwhelming to be refuted. The case immediately sparked a fierce wave of public debate across Canada. On one hand, people were deeply shocked that a seemingly respectable family could carry out such brutal acts against their own blood. On the other hand, the concept of honor killings became a hot-button issue across media and society. This type of crime had mostly been reported in the Middle East and South Asia, but was now appearing in over 20 countries worldwide. According to the United Nations Population Fund, up to 5,000 women are murdered each year by their own relatives under the pretext of defending family honor. This horrifying case dragged the issue of honor-based killings out from the shadows of cultural silence into the harsh light of public scrutiny. It shook Canada to its core and became a turning point in the nation's judicial history. The government began increasing awareness about the dangers of domestic violence and encouraging serious discussions on cultural integration policies. The Muhammad family case not only stunned Canada, but also left behind a heavy question in the hearts of many. Is pride and honor really worth more than the lives of your own loved ones? Behind the tears lies a painful lesson about cultural conflict, blind traditionalism, and the tragic consequences when familial love is suffocated by rigid expectations. Never forget, no one has the right to take a life in the name of honor, not even within their own family. If you found this story meaningful, please share it to help spread this important message and raise awareness. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to stay connected with us. There are many more fascinating, suspenseful, and deeply meaningful cases we'll be bringing you once again. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.